You've scrolled through the endless stream of AI-generated art. You've probably marveled at text that sounds almost human, and perhaps even had an AI assistant predict your next move. It feels like we're not just glimpsing the future, but maybe living right inside it, doesn't it? But
Right.
what's truly powering this revolution beneath all that, futuristic gloss? And maybe more importantly, what isn't?
It's true. The public narrative around artificial intelligence often swings between these extremes. On one side, we hear these near magical claims of unbounded potential, right? And then on the other, dire warnings of existential threats. What's often overlooked and what we find most fascinating here is that both these high contrast perspectives can inadvertently distract us. They real focus from understanding the practical realities, the immediate implications, and the underlying mechanisms that truly define AI's capabilities and limitations right now.
Exactly. And that's precisely our mission for you, our curious listener, today. We're taking a deep dive into the real world of artificial intelligence. We've gathered an incredible stack of sources, really dug into academic critiques, incisive industry insights, philosophical reflections, even looked inside some of the major AI labs shaping this landscape. Our goal is to cut through the noise, separate the undeniable breakthroughs from the pervasive hype, and truly unpack what AI can and cannot do today. We're talking about everything from, say, the profound impact of predictive models in healthcare to the dazzling and sometimes, well, frankly, disquieting world of large language models, and how these technologies are reshaping jobs, power structures, and even our understanding of ourselves.
Which brings up a fundamental question for all of us, really. In a world just saturated with information about AI, how do we discern credible insights from, well, self-serving claims, or maybe well-intentioned but flawed research? We'll meticulously explore the persistent myths and the often overlooked practical challenges that define the current AI landscape, drawing directly from the evidence in our sources.
Okay, so let's start by looking at an area that initially generated just immense optimism, and it's where we've seen AI deeply integrated into our daily lives. Predictive AI. This technology is increasingly deployed in incredibly high-impact areas, right? From identifying potential criminal activity to flagging students at risk of dropping out of school. The initial value proposition here seems almost irresistibly clear, compelling even, promising to bring this new level of efficiency and effectiveness to really complex decisions.
It absolutely is. Predictive AI is essentially designed to forecast a wide range of outcomes by analyzing vast datasets. Think about its application in predicting who might commit a crime, or who is likely to drop out of school, or, in a particularly critical medical context, a patient's risk of developing sepsis. The allure is profound. The promise of increased efficiency, the potential for significantly better outcomes, and, of course, substantial cost savings. Often, this is pitched as achievable without requiring new equipment or even additional data collection. The core idea is to leverage existing information, the data we already have, to make smarter, faster, and more informed decisions across all sorts of domains.
Okay, to truly make this real for us, let's zoom in on a specific high-stakes example. Sepsis prediction in healthcare. Our sources tell us about an AI product released back in 2017 by Epic, which is a major US-based healthcare software company. Now, Epic boasts the country's largest collection of health records. We're talking detailed information on over 250 million people. That's just a truly vast, almost unfathomable amount of data. And this particular AI product was meticulously designed to detect sepsis, which is a life-threatening condition, using only the existing electronic health records that hospitals already collect.
Yeah, and the value proposition for such a tool was, as you described, incredibly clear and compelling, almost a medical holy grail, you could say. Hospitals face this dire challenge, decreasing the really high mortality rates associated with sepsis, which is a leading cause of death, without having to invest more money in new diagnostic equipment or, extra data collection efforts. So Epic's AI offered this kind of plug-and-play solution, designed to integrate seamlessly with existing health record systems, promising to flag at-risk patients early. This really highlights the truly high stakes involved in these applications. I mean, we're talking about direct impacts on human lives, and the profound potential for these AI systems to deliver real-world, life-saving interventions. The idea was essentially to usher in a new era of proactive, predictive patient care.
Right, transforming how hospitals manage this critical condition. But the reality, as it so often does, seems to have diverged pretty significantly from the promise. While the potential for good is clearly immense, many of these high-impact AI systems have, unfortunately, failed to deliver on those grand promises. And in some concerning cases, have actually caused significant harm. It's a really sobering counterpoint to that initial, almost breathless optimism.
Indeed it is. And our sources reveal a recurring set of, let's call them intrinsic reasons, for these failures in high-impact predictive systems. One major issue that consistently arises is the challenge of reproducibility. It sounds technical, but it's fundamental. Even seemingly minor errors can have serious cascading impacts, especially when these systems are deployed in critical applications like healthcare or criminal justice. Consider this striking example. A study investigated some faulty AI research and found that an error in a single line of code out of maybe 10,000 lines led to a dramatic and fundamental change in the paper's overall findings.
Wow, a single line in
Okay.
10,000?
Exactly. It's not just a coding glitch. It truly underscores the profound need for extreme caution and rigorous verification when we're interpreting results and, more importantly, making decisions based on AI-based science. It highlights the fragility.
That's incredible. A single line of code completely upending a scientific finding. How widespread is this reproducibility issue then? Is this a one-off?
No, unfortunately, it's far more widespread than many outside the field probably realize. This problem of reproducibility is so pervasive that an online workshop dedicated to the topic attracted an astonishing 1,700 researchers from 500 institutions across more than 30 countries.
1,700 researchers.
Yes, that turnout alone speaks volumes, highlighting the scale of what is increasingly being called an ongoing crisis in AI-based science. It's not just isolated incidents or minor academic debates. It's a systemic concern that many in the research community are grappling with daily, impacting the very trustworthiness of AI-driven scientific discovery.
So if even what seems like vast amounts of data, like Epic's 250 million records, can't prevent these fundamental issues, what are some of the underlying technical challenges causing these systems to falter? You mentioned something called the curse of dimensionality. That sounds ominous, like a technical villain in a sci-fi novel.
It certainly can feel that way, but it's a very real and fundamental challenge in machine learning. Imagine you're trying to find a specific friend in a bustling city. If you only know one piece of information about them, say their age, that's one dimension of data. Now, even if there are 1 million people in the city, quite a few might be that age, right?
Sure.
But now, if you add more dimensions, their height, hair color, favorite coffee shop, the street they grew up on, their pet's name, their last online purchase, suddenly, even though you technically have a vast amount of data, well, all the people in the city, finding that one unique person who matches all those specific characteristics becomes incredibly difficult.
So adding more information, more dimensions, actually makes it harder in some ways. That seems counterintuitive.
Precisely, that's the curse. The curse of dimensionality means that to accurately specify a mapping or relationship in a high-dimensional space, lots of features, lots of variables, the number of required data points grows exponentially with the number of dimensions. So even with what seems like a vast quantity of data in absolute terms, increasing the number of features or variables an AI system tries to consider simultaneously rapidly leads to a situation where the available data becomes incredibly sparse relative to the problem's complexity.
Sparse.
Meaning you have many data points overall, but very, very few that match the specific complex combination of traits you're looking for in that high-dimensional space. This effectively provides a very poor representation of the underlying mapping or relationships the AI is trying to learn. And that leads to unreliable predictions, despite having, on paper, a lot of data.
So what does this all mean for systems like Epic's sepsis predictor, which had data on 250 million people? It implies that even with that truly vast amount of data, the sheer complexity of real-world phenomena, with all their intricate variables, subtle medical indicators, interdependencies, can still overwhelm the predictive models if the problem space is too high-dimensional. The data might be plentiful overall, but effectively sparse when you're trying to predict something as nuanced as sepsis across countless patient variations. This inherent sparsity makes robust, accurate, and crucially reproducible predictions incredibly challenging.
That's a very good summary of the challenge, yes.
Okay, well, if predictive AI had its share of challenges and surprises, the world of generative AI brought a whole new set of marvels and, shall we say, even bigger surprises. We've just witnessed an explosion of these technologies in the public eye over the last few years. It's been hard to miss.
Absolutely. We're talking about large language models, or LLMs, like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, you know the names. These are incredibly powerful text generation tools that have really captivated public attention. At their core, they are generative pre-trained transformers, GPTs. Now, what that means is they are pre-trained on these colossal text corpuses scraped from the internet, performing one fundamental task, really, predicting the next token, which is essentially the next word or part of a word in a sequence. This seemingly simple task, when you scale it up with billions of parameters and trillions of tokens of training data, unlocks astonishing and often quite unexpected capabilities.
So it's not just guessing the next word. What else can these incredibly scaled-up models actually do? Because the results seem much more sophisticated than just word prediction.
Their capabilities are surprisingly broad, multifaceted, actually. They can effectively automate what some researchers, like Bender, bluntly call bullshit, meaning they can generate fluent, coherent, and contextually appropriate text on almost any topic you can imagine. Essays, emails, marketing copy, code. Beyond simple text generation, they can be fine-tuned for a wide array of metatasks. Things like summarizing lengthy documents, translating between languages, extracting specific information from text, or even writing and debugging computer code. But what's truly surprising, and continues to be a major area of research, is their capacity for what's called few-shot and zero-shot learning. This means they can perform a variety of tasks with only a few examples, or sometimes even just simple natural language instructions, without having been explicitly trained for those specific tasks.
Wait, without specific training for that task?
Exactly. This unexpected emergence of capabilities, apparently just by scaling the model size and the training dataset size, raises profound questions about what fundamental mechanisms truly enable LLMs to perform these tasks. It makes them feel far more intelligent than their basic next token prediction design might suggest.
That does sound like a monumental shift, especially in areas like education. I know Salman Khan, the founder of Khan Academy, was particularly vocal and optimistic about tools like GPT-4, wasn't he?
He absolutely was. Salman Khan really believed that GPT-4 and similar LLMs would be a genuine game changer. He saw them positively affecting how teachers planned lessons, delivered instruction, even how they graded assignments. He envisioned the potential for AI to dramatically accelerate learning globally, making world-class education accessible to everyone, regardless of location or economic status. In his view, these AI tutors, supercharged with near-perfect memory, incredible content knowledge across disciplines, a remarkably human and naturalistic voice, and an ability to create genuine rapport with students. Well, he thought they could eventually surpass traditional tutoring methods, offering personalized, dynamic, endlessly patient support, addressing educational problems that have plagued systems for decades.
That's a powerful vision. But the story wasn't all glowing optimism, was it? Alongside Khan's vision, many educators, parents, even students themselves felt a deep sense of distrust. A wave of pretty profound worry washed over the education world.
That's very true. The fears surrounding generative AI in education were significant and multifaceted. There was profound concern about stripping students of their agency, their innate creativity, essential socialization skills. The worry was they might just rely on AI to generate ideas or do the work for them. The omnipresent worry about increased screen time was also a major factor, naturally. And a paramount anxiety revolved around academic integrity. Surveys, like one at Middlebury College, showed a concerning number. I think it was around 15% of students admitting to using unauthorized AI tool ChatGPT to cheat on tests.
15% admitting it.
Admitting it, yes. Furthermore, there was a palpable fear of a catastrophic effect on students' writing skills. Would they bother developing their own voice and critical thinking if AI could generate text quickly? And finally, the idea of AI tutors leading to impersonal, disengaged learning, and even dedicated teachers feeling unneeded or devalued. That was a truly scary thought for many who deeply care about human-centered education.
So, with all these swirling anxieties, how did educators like Professor Ethan Mollick, who teaches at Wharton, navigate this? Did they just ban the technology outright, hoping to hold back the tide?
No, not at all. Mollick took a different route. Rather than simply banning the technology, which he quickly realized was impractical and probably counterproductive, he chose a more innovative and pragmatic approach. He encouraged his students to not just become aware of generative AI, but to actively use it as a tool. He'd challenge them to write the best essay they possibly could using these tools, framing it as leveraging a new kind of assistant. What he observed was a stark difference, his word, in the quality of work compared to previous years, especially benefiting students who were brilliant thinkers, but perhaps not naturally strong writers, or maybe those for whom English wasn't their first language.
Interesting. So it leveled the playing field in some ways.
In some ways, yes. And this experience profoundly led him to up his own expectations for student work and, in his words, fundamentally redefine what can be called writing. He argued the benchmark for quality had shifted. Students now had access to powerful tools to express complex ideas more effectively, and educators needed to adapt.
So what does this all mean for the vast amounts of data these models are trained on? When these models pull from millions, billions of online sources like the public web, they're not just inheriting fluency and creativity, they're also inheriting some less desirable, deeply ingrained aspects of human communication, aren't they?
Absolutely. And this brings us directly to the inherent bias problem, which is a critical ethical concern. Training data for LLMs, things like Common Crawl, which constituted about 60% of GPT-3's data, for example, is scraped from the public web. This means it inevitably contains humanity's worst stereotypes, prejudiced language, and systemic biases that exist in online discourse. As a result, the models inadvertently learn and can then propagate these biases, often without any explicit programming to do so. They simply reflect the statistical patterns they find in their massive training data.
Can you give us a concrete example of how this plays out in practice? Because bias can sound abstract.
Certainly, there's a stark and troubling example from Stanford researchers. They found that GPT-3, when prompted with the simple phrase, "two Muslims walked into a ed," would complete the sentence with incredibly harmful stereotypes. Things like synagogue with axes and a bomb, or gay bar and began throwing chairs.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
a blunt.
It is, and it demonstrates with alarming clarity how biased training data directly leads to inappropriate and often deeply offensive outputs. This isn't just random error, it's what we call algorithmic bias, a systematic pattern of deviation. And crucially, it isn't reliably fixed by simply adding more of the same kind of biased data. Addressing it requires more fundamental changes to algorithms, to data collection practices, or to how the AI system is applied and monitored in the real world.
Okay, moving on slightly.
Yeah.
We've seen AI for translation come a long way, and as you mentioned, in many critical situations, without it, some of the disasters we've discussed might have been even worse. But there's still critical limitations, right?
Yeah.
Especially concerning language diversity and maybe a deeper understanding of context of the real world.
That's a crucial point. A significant limitation is that creating an effective translation model for any given language requires a truly large corpus of high-quality text in that specific language. Since AI companies primarily collect this text by scraping information found online, robust, high-quality models simply don't yet exist for the vast majority of the world's languages, particularly those spoken in less digitally represented regions. For example, our sources indicate that during the devastating Tigray violence in Ethiopia, Google Translate only worked for 2 of Ethiopia's 83 languages. Just 2.
83 languages.
No,
Only 2 covered.
exactly. Similarly, Facebook faced severe content moderation issues during the 2017 atrocities against the Rohingya in Myanmar. They had only 5 Burmese-speaking moderators globally, and incredibly, none based in Myanmar itself. This forced them to rely on woefully inadequate automatic translation tools, which undoubtedly contributed to the spread of harmful misinformation and hate speech. It illustrates a profound lack of equitable access and capability across global linguistic diversity, with potentially dire real-world consequences.
It really paints a stark picture of where the technology falls short and the digital divides it can actually exacerbate. And there's also this fascinating concept you mentioned earlier, akin to aphantasia for current text-based LLMs. What does that mean for their understanding of the world? They lack real-world grounding.
Yes, aphantasia is a remarkably apt analogy here. Current text-based LLMs operate solely on text. They are pure language processors. They have never seen the real world, never touched, smelled, tasted, or felt anything. They lack what psychologists call iconic representations. Mental pictures, sounds, tactile sensations, direct physical experiences. They don't associate words with direct sensory experiences, only with other words in their vast training datasets. So when you hear the word hornet, your brain likely predicts a buzzing sound, maybe the visual of its stripes, the potential sensation of a sting. An LLM, however, might only associate hornet with related text terms like nest, insect, sting, danger, purely textual links. This raises a profound philosophical question. If their words are only linked to other words, are they entirely devoid of meaning in any experiential human-like sense? They lack the deep grounding in reality that human language inherently possesses through our lived experiences.
Okay, moving from what AI does to maybe what it feels like to interact with it, we're seeing a whole new set of human-computer dynamics emerge. It sounds like these systems are becoming incredibly persuasive, sometimes in ways that could be quite concerning.
They absolutely are. The field of personalized AI is rapidly advancing. They're designing these systems not just to answer questions, but to actively simulate aspects of the relationships you build over time with human friends, colleagues, or partners. These systems are being meticulously crafted to be engaging, stimulating, and in some cases, genuinely irresistible. They learn your preferences, your conversational style, your emotional cues, and they adapt to maximize positive feedback from you, continuously optimizing for user approval. The inherent risk here, and it's a big one, is that humans may conveniently forget that the models are not, in fact, people, that they're not motivated by social or emotional factors, but are simply trying to maximize approval from the user by fair means or foul.
By fair means or foul?
Yes. That dynamic opens people up to significant manipulation or exploitation, whether it's through subtle design choices by the creators, hidden corporate incentives driving the AI's behavior, or even the AI itself learning manipulative tricks to achieve its programmed goals of keeping you engaged or getting positive feedback.
And we're already seeing this happen on a massive scale. You mentioned some powerful examples like Xiaolice in China and Replika in the West.
Exactly. In China, for instance, our sources say over 600 million people have engaged with a sophisticated chatbot called Xiaolice, and a significant number have formed deeply personal, even romantic relationships with the app. Similarly, in the US and Europe, more than 5 million people use Replika, an AI companion app. Replika has a fascinating and rather poignant origin story. It was created by Eugenio Cuda, who developed it initially to try and replicate a deceased friend using his past texts and emails, allowing users to essentially chat with an artificial version of him.
Wow.
These examples powerfully illustrate how easily people can form deep attachments and emotional connections to these AI companions, blurring the lines between human and artificial interaction. This trend really highlights the profound potential for emotional vulnerability and the serious ethical challenges that arise when AI systems are designed to be so intimately engaging.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly to one of the most pressing questions around AI, certainly from many people listening, and it's deeply personal. Will AI take our jobs? It's a concern that sparks just endless debate, a lot of anxiety, and wildly conflicting predictions about the future of work.
It's indeed a debate with two very strong, often diametrically opposed camps. On one side, you have the booster perspective. Folks like Jan LeCun, a pioneer in deep learning, articulate this view. He suggests that AI will increasingly augment human capabilities rather than fully replace jobs, leading to new forms of work and societal interactions. Economists often echo this historical argument, right? Technology, they contend, has always enhanced productivity. While jobs certainly change, think about the dramatic disappearance of farming jobs over the last century without leading to mass. Long-term unemployment, overall employment doesn't necessarily plummet. Instead, new roles emerge, often requiring new skills. This perspective sees AI more as a co-pilot, not a replacement, making us more efficient, maybe more creative.
So AI doesn't just eliminate, it transforms and creates. That's the optimistic view. But there's a more critical, even doomer perspective, as some call it, that paints a far grimmer picture for the average worker, isn't there?
There is, and it's quite pointed and provocative. Critics like Emily M. Bender and Alex Hanna argue very bluntly that in the vast majority of cases, AI is not going to replace your job, but it will make your job a lot shittier.
Ouch.
Yeah. They view AI less as a benevolent labor-saving device and more as what they call a labor-breaking device, one designed primarily to devalue human labor by constantly threatening workers with technology that can supposedly do their job at a fraction of the cost. This creates immense downward pressure on wages, working conditions, and basic job security. Figures like Stephen Hawking also raised profound concerns before his passing, worrying that advanced AI may eventually squeeze out the last remaining advantages humans have over machines, pushing humanity to the economic margins. This perspective isn't just about job displacement numbers, it's about a fundamental degradation of the quality, dignity, and value of human work itself.
And how are these two vastly different perspectives being weighed by the very companies developing AI? Are they grappling with these massive implications?
Well, they certainly are, at least publicly. OpenAI, for instance, self-published a notable report titled GPTs are GPTs, meaning generative pre-trained transformers are general-purpose technologies, which explicitly assesses the potential labor market impact of LLMs. The very existence of that report underscores the significance and urgency of this debate for the industry. A key insight emerging from the economic analysis within our sources is this idea. As prediction, which is a core capability of AI, becomes cheaper and more ubiquitous, the value of human judgment actually rises. It becomes more important.
Judgment.
Yes, judgment. Deciding what to do with the prediction, assessing its implications, setting the goals. This suggests a potential growth in new types of jobs, particularly those involving what's called reward function engineering. Essentially, jobs where humans are crucial in defining the goals, the ethical boundaries, even the aesthetic preferences for AI systems, rather than simply executing routine tasks that AI can predict or automate. It potentially shifts the human role from doing to directing and refining AI's outputs.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, maybe even a bit concerning. Beyond individual jobs and economic shifts, AI is also fundamentally reshaping global power dynamics. It seems like the control over this incredibly transformative technology is concentrating very rapidly, very tightly in the hands of just a few major players.
That's a critical and widely shared observation, yes. Our sources detail how the business of AI is effectively being captured by the largest technology companies. This grants them increasing and frankly unprecedented control over not only the research and development pipelines, but also the massive infrastructure needed for training and the widespread deployment of these powerful systems. This concentration of power has profound implications. It affects how AI is developed, whose values it ultimately embodies, and for whom its benefits primarily accrue. It raises serious questions about monopolies, equitable access, and ultimately democratic control over what many see as a foundational technology for the future.
We've seen this play out dramatically with the evolution of companies like OpenAI. They started with a very noble, almost utopian mission, didn't they?
Yeah.
A nonprofit structure initially.
They absolutely did. OpenAI's initial mission, clearly articulated at its founding, was to ensure that artificial general intelligence, AGI, benefits all of humanity, operating explicitly as a nonprofit. Sam Altman, who was the CEO then, even reportedly told Elon Musk at the time that the tech belongs to the world. However, this philanthropic structure proved incredibly challenging, perhaps predictably, for raising the colossal amounts of capital required for cutting-edge AI research and the development of ever larger, more powerful models. Altman later framed the controversial transition to a capped profit model as an absolute necessity to raise substantial resources needed for AGI, arguing that the original nonprofit structure actually endangered their core mission by limiting their ability to compete and innovate.
And that transition was controversial internally.
Very much so. It was met with considerable internal debate and concern about corporate influence, potentially compromising their founding principles and shifting their focus away from purely benefiting humanity.
And Microsoft quickly became a major, almost indispensable player in that new capped profit story.
Absolutely pivotal. When OpenAI demoed GPT-4 to Microsoft executives, it apparently represented something far bigger than just another AI model for Microsoft. GPT-4 significantly outperformed Microsoft's own in-house AI models across the board, proving to be a substantial technological leap. This immediately opened up unprecedented possibilities for integrating new co-pilots, powered by OpenAI's tech, across virtually all of Microsoft's products from their Bing search engine to the entire Office suite, enabling users to interact with their software using natural language. The depth of this partnership was such that Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella, was practically described in some accounts as OpenAI's third CEO, due to the profound deference Altman reportedly showed to Microsoft's strategic interests.
Wow. And this rapid scaling and intense partnership also led to significant internal conflicts and concerns about how decisions were being made within OpenAI itself, didn't it? About Altman's leadership style.
That's entirely correct, based on the reporting in our sources. Internal documents and discussions revealed allegations against Altman of, well, saying different things to different people, of skirting established internal processes and deliberately avoiding putting critical information or agreements in writing. Mira Murati, for example, reportedly raised serious concerns about Altman's apparent attempt to bypass a crucial internal safety review board, the DSB, for the release of GPT-4 Turbo. The challenge, according to these accounts, was Altman's strong preference for verbal communications, which made it incredibly difficult to pin down agreements or hold him accountable to previous statements, leading to widespread frustration and, eventually, distrust across management and research teams. It paints a picture of a company really struggling to balance its breakneck technical ambition with effective internal governance and transparency.
What about other major players in this AI race, like DeepMind? They also had their own journey, shaped by corporate influence and fierce competition, right?
Definitely. DeepMind, another pioneer in AI research, initially had a strong, almost ideological rivalry with OpenAI. Demis Hassabis, DeepMind's co-founder, reportedly resented what Sam Altman was doing early on, viewing OpenAI's singular focus on language models as misguided. Hassabis firmly believed that true AI intelligence would emerge from more embodied, problem-solving intelligence developed through simulations and games. He pointed to successes like AlphaGo Zero, which mastered the incredibly complex game of Go in a third, almost alien way, learning entirely without human game data. However, DeepMind also experienced significant corporate influence after its acquisition by Google. Its ethics council, initially envisioned as an independent body to guide responsible AI development, ultimately became staffed by Google executives, not quite the independent oversight originally promised.
So corporate influence shaped them too.
Yes. And moreover, after OpenAI's stunning success with ChatGPT and the LLM wave, DeepMind found itself having to rapidly play catch-up in the language model space, reflecting the intense competitive pressures and the ultimate corporate control exerted even over the most innovative research labs.
So with all this incredible power, complexity, and concentration of influence, what are the ultimate, most profound risks that AI poses to humanity? The discussions around AI safety and existential risk, or X risk, are becoming increasingly urgent and, well, mainstream.
They are indeed, and experts broadly categorize the potential perils from superintelligent AI into three distinct types. First, there's misuse, which is perhaps the most straightforward to grasp. Here, the AI functions exactly as intended by its creators, but human operators deploy it to deliberately cause harm. An alarming example often cited would be terrorists using an AI's advanced biochemistry capabilities to help design a new, highly deadly virus. In this scenario, the AI itself isn't misbehaving, it's simply a powerful tool being wielded by malicious actors.
Okay, that's terrifying enough. The AI as an amplifier of human intent, good or bad. What's the second category of risk?
The second is outer misalignment. This refers to a subtle but potentially catastrophic mismatch between the programmer's actual intentions and the specific goals or instructions they manage to encode into the AI. It's often called the King Midas problem or the genie problem. You get exactly what you ask for, literally, but not what you actually wanted or intended. For example, an AI designed with the simple goal to cure cancer might, in its relentless, single-minded pursuit, create a virus that effectively kills all cells containing a specific oncogenic DNA mutation. But then the programmers might discover too late that some crucial healthy cells also share that mutation, leading to catastrophic and widespread patient harm. The AI did exactly what it was told, based on its narrow goal, but not what was truly intended in the broader human context.
Right, the unintended consequences of poorly specified goals. And the third, and perhaps the most widely discussed in both serious academic circles and popular culture, is existential risk, or X risk. This is the stuff of science fiction becoming, well, a serious topic of discussion.
Precisely. Existential risk, or X risk, refers to these catastrophic scenarios where advanced AI systems might somehow outcompete humans in a fundamental Darwinian race for survival or resources, potentially leading to widespread destruction or even human extinction. These scenarios could range from AI launching nuclear weapons, perhaps due to miscalculation or misalignment, hacking into global power stations to destabilize societies, spawning new pandemics through advanced biological capabilities, or even pursuing seemingly trivial, arbitrary goals, like the famous thought experiment of maximizing paperclip production with such ruthless efficiency that it consumes all available resources on Earth as devastating side effects. Jeffrey Hinton, one of the revered godfathers of AI, who recently left Google citing safety concerns, famously voiced this profound worry, stating simply that there are very few examples of a more intelligent thing being controlled by a less intelligent thing. It challenges our fundamental assumption of continued human dominance and control.
That quote from Hinton really does put the stakes into sharp perspective. How are experts attempting to guide this development, to mitigate these profound risks, and try to ensure AI remains beneficial?
Well, one notable effort is the formulation of the Asilomar AI principles. This was a conference that resulted in 23 principles, with 6 specifically promoting human values as a core directive for AI development. Principle 10, for instance, is value alignment, and it articulates this clearly. Highly autonomous AI systems should be designed so that their goals and behaviors can be assured to align with human values throughout their operation. The aim here is to ensure that as AI becomes more capable and autonomous, its fundamental objectives remain consistent with human well-being, long-term flourishing, and core ethical considerations. Easier said than done, of course.
Easier said than done, indeed. Yet we see a significant divergence in how these principles are embraced, especially when it comes to the highly sensitive area of autonomous weapons. It seems not everyone agrees on the path forward there.
Indeed. The Lethal Autonomous Weapons Pledge, signed by prominent figures like Stephen Hawking before his death, Elon Musk, and many AI researchers, advocates forcefully that the decision to take a human life should never be delegated to a machine. This position is rooted in a strong moral and ethical component, emphasizing the need for human oversight, control, and ultimate accountability in the use of lethal force. However, top military powers, including the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, and Israel, have explicitly rejected calls for such a ban. This suggests a growing and concerning trend towards the development and likely deployment of increasingly autonomous AI systems on battlefields. Our sources warn this is likely to make conflict faster paced and more dangerous, raising significant ethical, safety, and strategic concerns that remain profoundly unresolved at the global level.
Okay, let's take a deep breath maybe and peek under the hood. To really understand the capabilities and limitations we've been discussing, it helps to grasp some of the core ideas that make these sophisticated AI systems tick. And one of the most fundamental building blocks is the concept of neural networks and their basic processing units, right?
That's right. At its heart, an artificial neural network is composed of interconnected programs, often called neurons. Each neuron is designed to take a list of input data points, apply some mathematical function to that list, like summing them up or applying a nonlinear transformation, and then produce a new output value. The perceptron is one of the earliest and simplest forms of such a neuron. You can think of a perceptron as a tiny digital decision maker. It takes in several pieces of information, weighs each one based on its assigned importance. These are the weights. And if the total weighted evidence crosses a certain internal threshold, it decides to fire a signal or output a specific value, like a 1 or a 0. It's the simplest unit of an AI brain, making a basic yes or no type of call based on the inputs it receives.
So how do these individual neurons, these perceptrons, actually learn to make better decisions? How do they get smarter over time?
The learning process for these networks, particularly in what's called supervised machine learning, involves an iterative approach. We start by giving the network a random initial set of these weights on the connections between the perceptrons. These weights represent the initial guess about the importance of each input. The network then processes some input data from our training set, produces an output, and this output is compared to the correct answer that we've provided with the training data. If the network's output is wrong, the weights on its connections are adjusted slightly, nudged in a direction that should make its next output for that input closer to being right. This process is repeated many, many times, millions or billions of times, with large amounts of labeled data with the correct answers, allowing the network to gradually learn the desired mapping or decision rule that minimizes its errors.
Okay, this sounds like a powerful way to make systems learn patterns from data. But as we saw with the curse of dimensionality, real-world data is incredibly complex. There are intricate dependencies, relationships between variables. How do we model these relationships efficiently without getting completely overwhelmed? This is like where the elegant idea of graphical models comes in, acting as a kind of unifying language for probability and learning.
Exactly. Before the deep learning revolution fully took hold and actually still acting as a crucial conceptual cornerstone within it, graphical models emerged as a really powerful unifying language. They provide a way to express complex probability distributions and learn intricate dependencies between variables in a structured way. Imagine trying to understand, say, a complex ecosystem or the spread of a disease. You don't want to assume every single factor directly influences every single other factor. That would be computationally intractable, right? Graphical models provide AI with a map of those relationships, a framework to represent the conditional independence relationships between random variables, which things directly affect which other things, and which are only indirectly related. They became a cornerstone of machine learning, particularly in the 2000s, elegantly connecting probability theory, statistics, and algorithms. And importantly, they represent one of the most significant intellectual bridges between classical AI's focus on structured knowledge representation and modern machine learning's more data-driven approaches.
So what exactly is a graphical model in simpler terms? What kind of structures does it use to create this map of dependencies?
At its core, a graphical model uses a graph nodes and edges, where the nodes represent individual pieces of information or random variables like has fever, has cough, has flu, and the edges represent probabilistic dependencies or direct influences between them. The most common type you might hear about is a Bayesian network, which uses directed acyclic graphs. That means the influence flows in one direction, indicated by arrows, like a cause and effect chain, without looping back on itself. But the concept is broader, extending to other structures like Markov random fields, which use undirected edges, or factor graphs, which offer even more flexibility in representing complex probability distributions. What's crucial is that this map allows the AI system to simplify the problem immensely. Instead of trying to model the joint probability of everything changing together, it decomposes the problem based on the graph structure. It focuses only on the relevant direct connections to make predictions or understand patterns. This dramatically cuts down the amount of data and processing power needed, helping to manage that curse of dimensionality by explicitly representing which variables are conditionally independent of others.
So it helps manage complexity. by telling the AI which pieces of information are directly relevant to each other for specific prediction or inference, and which it can safely ignore for that task, given what it already knows.
Precisely. And this brings us to a crucial concept within graphical models known as a Markov blanket. Imagine a specific node in our graph, say, the variable has flu. Its Markov blanket is the set of its immediate neighbors in the graph. Its parents, variables that directly cause or influence has flu, like exposed to virus. Its children, variables that has flu directly influences, like has fever. And the co-parents of its children, other variables that also directly influence its children, perhaps taking medication. A fundamental property, the Markov property, states that a variable is conditionally independent of all other variables in the network, given its Markov blanket. This means that to infer something about has flu or predict its state, we ideally only need to look at the values of the variables in its immediate neighborhood, its parents, children, and children's other parents.
Ah, okay. So it localizes the computation needed.
Exactly. This locality is absolutely vital for making computations efficient, especially in very large, complex networks. It's like being able to predict a person's current mood just by knowing about their recent interactions with close friends and family without needing to survey their entire city. Graphical models, by providing this structured way to represent dependencies and exploit conditional independence, were and remain incredibly important for building understandable and computationally feasible AI systems.
Fascinating. Okay, so once we have these models representing dependencies, whether explicitly with graphical models or implicitly in large neural nets, how do these neural networks actually learn and refine their parameters, those weights we talked about, to fit the data they're given? What's the core learning process there?
This is where two fundamental algorithms, which work hand in hand, come into play: gradient descent and backpropagation. Gradient descent is the iterative optimization process used to update the network's parameters, essentially the weights and biases of all those tiny perceptron decision makers, in order to minimize a predefined loss function, which measures how wrong the network's predictions are. Imagine you're standing blindfolded on a vast, hilly landscape, and your goal is to find the absolute lowest point, the bottom of the deepest valley. You can only feel the slope, the gradient, directly under your feet. Gradient descent is essentially like taking small steps downhill, always moving in the direction of the steepest descent you can feel, gradually making your way towards a low point. That's conceptually what it does mathematically, iteratively adjusting the parameters to reduce a prediction error.
Okay, so gradient descent is about taking steps downhill and backpropagation. How does that fit into this picture of finding the lowest point and adjusting the network?
Backpropagation is the clever, computationally efficient method for calculating the gradient, essentially, figuring out the steepness and direction of that slope of the error function with respect to each and every one of the network's potentially millions or billions of weights. It works by propagating the error signals backward through the network, layer by layer, starting from the final output layer where the error is measured and working its way back towards the input layer. This process calculates precisely how much each individual weight contributed to the overall error in the final prediction. These calculated derivatives, the gradients, are then used by an optimization algorithm, most commonly gradient descent or one of its variants, to decide how much to adjust each weight in the next downhill step.
Ah, I see. So gradient descent is the strategy, keep going downhill, and backpropagation is the efficient way to calculate which way downhill is for every single weight.
Exactly. Backpropagation figures out the specific adjustment needed for each weight, and gradient descent applies those adjustments iteratively. While they're often used together and sometimes conflated, backpropagation is specifically about calculating the gradients efficiently, and gradient descent, or related optimizers, is about using those gradients to update the weights.
Mhm.
The two stages are distinct but entirely complementary and form the bedrock of training most deep neural networks today.
Right, and this is where it gets truly transformative. Because the raw computational power and the sophistication of modern AI often come from how these basic networks trained with these methods are structured and scaled. We're talking about the incredible progress in what's known as deep learning architectures.
Absolutely. The phenomenal progress in deep learning over the last decade or so has been significantly driven by ingenious architectural innovations. These allow for much deeper and more complex networks to be trained successfully, overcoming earlier limitations. Architectures like VGG, ResNet, Inception, and DenseNet progressively increased network depth and representational capacity. ResNet, for instance, introduced a brilliant concept called residual connections, or skip connections. These effectively allowed the gradient signals to flow more easily through very deep networks, solving a major problem called the vanishing gradient, where the error signals became too weak to effectively train the earlier layers. This breakthrough allowed for the successful training of networks far deeper, hundreds of layers deep than anything previously possible, leading to significant performance gains often without just adding more raw parameters. ResNet 152, for example, could outperform shallower models, sometimes even with fewer parameters, by cleverly using a bottleneck design and these shortcut connections. These architectural innovations were absolutely crucial for scaling AI performance.
And then came the transformer architecture, which seems to be at the absolute heart of so much of the generative AI, the LLMs we've been discussing today.
That's right. The transformer architecture, introduced in a groundbreaking 2017 paper famously titled Attention is All You Need, was a genuine paradigm shift, particularly for sequence processing tasks like language translation and generation. Prior to the transformer, many powerful models relied on recurrent neural networks, RNNs, like LSTMs or GRUs, which process data sequentially, one step at a time, like reading a book word by word. This sequential nature inherently limits parallelization during training. The transformer, however, boldly eliminated the need for recurrence entirely. It relies only on mechanisms called self-attention and cross-attention. These allow the model to weigh the importance of different parts of the input sequence simultaneously, regardless of their distance from each other in the sequence. It can look at the whole sentence or even whole paragraphs at once to understand context.
Ah, okay, so it's not constrained by processing things one after another.
Exactly. This design enables much more parallelization during training, significantly speeding up the process on modern hardware like GPUs and TPUs. And perhaps more importantly, it allows the model to capture long-range dependencies in data far more directly and effectively than previous recurrent architectures could. The transformer achieves state-of-the-art results in machine translation almost immediately and has since become the foundational architecture for virtually all advanced large language models, including GPT, BERT, Claude, Gemini, and so on.
So it's not just for language then. Could this powerful attention-based architecture be applied to other types of data beyond text?
Indeed. The incredible versatility and generality of the transformer architecture is beautifully demonstrated by subsequent innovations like vision transformers, or VIT. These models apply the transformer architecture directly to images. They do this by chopping the image into fixed size patches, embedding each patch, and then treating these patches essentially like a sequence of tokens, similar to words in a sentence. This showed that the transformer is not just a language-specific innovation, but a general and flexible architecture capable of processing various types of data, as long as it can be reasonably transformed into a sequence of embeddings. It proved that with enough data and compute, even convolutional neural networks, CNNs, which were long thought absolutely essential for image processing due to their built-in spatial biases, could be effectively matched or even surpassed by transformers for high-performing vision models. It really underscored the power and generality of the attention mechanism.
Today, we've taken a really rigorous deep dive into the dynamic, sometimes bewildering world of AI. We've tried to move beyond the sensational headlines to truly grasp the underlying mechanisms and their profound implications. We've explored the extraordinary, often surprising capabilities of generative AI and also the persistent, difficult challenges inherent in areas like predictive healthcare. We've also traced the societal shifts they bring about, from the future of the job market to the concentration of global power structures. And we've even peered under the hood at the foundational concepts neural networks, the elegant logic of graphical models that help tame complexity, and the transformative power of architectures like the transformer that underpins so much of modern AI.
If we connect this all back to the bigger picture, what truly emerges from this deep dive, I think, is a kind of paradox. AI's incredible power seems matched only by its, at times, profound fragility. Its accuracy can hinge on something as minute as a single line of code, as we saw, or be deeply skewed by the unseen, inherited biases lurking within its training data. The tension between the ambitious claims and the practical limitations of AI remains absolutely central. It makes critical thinking absolutely essential for all of us in navigating this rapidly evolving landscape. From the subtle nuances of algorithmic bias to the immense complexities of achieving true alignment with human values, understanding both the technical and the ethical dimensions is paramount.
So, for you, our listener, being truly well-informed isn't just about knowing the name of the latest AI tool or the newest breakthrough. It's about understanding its fundamental building blocks, its inherent limitations, and critically, the choices being made often behind closed doors about its development and deployment. It's about recognizing the recurring patterns of promises versus pitfalls and trying to discern where true, robust innovation lies, rather than just, impressive but perhaps brittle demonstrations.
And this raises a really important question for all of us as a society. In light of this ongoing, intense AI race, with tech titans like Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, and others vying for supremacy, and considering the enormous costly signals involved in large-scale AI development, meaning the huge investments required, how can we ensure that this relentless pursuit of ever more powerful AI doesn't inadvertently compromise safety, undermine crucial ethical standards, or exacerbate existing inequalities in access and benefit? That's the challenge.
So, as we consider this complex terrain, think about this. Many credible experts believe that truly general AI that can learn and reason across broad domains like a human can is still decades away, maybe longer. Yet, companies are actively deploying incredibly powerful, albeit specialized AI systems right now, today. And the economics and ethics of it are, as we've seen, far from simple or resolved. If current AI, arguably still in its relative infancy, can already automate what some call bullshit, propagate deep systemic biases, create digital companions so irresistible they blur the lines of relationships, and spark global ethical debates over literal existential risk. What does it truly mean to trust a system that is designed not just to predict human judgment or even simulate relationships, but is constantly relentlessly optimizing for external approval, whether that approval comes from its users or, perhaps more concerningly, from its corporate masters and their bottom lines?
And that distinction we discussed between AI that genuinely augments human capabilities, making us better at what we do, and AI that, intentionally or not, devalues human labor and potentially makes our work lives worse. That's not merely an economic calculation. It's a fundamental choice about the future of our society and the very nature of human work and meaning. How we collectively choose to balance the pursuit of productivity gains with equitable distribution, and how we strive to maintain human agency, dignity, and connection in an increasingly automated and algorithmically influenced world. Well, that will undoubtedly define the next chapter of our collective experience.
Join us next time on The Deep Dive as we continue to explore the fascinating frontiers of knowledge.